at Center program. This morning's Miro at Center program is the Magic Flute, and our presenter today is Phyllis Hyken. Phyllis began studying the piano at the age of 5. She was a piano performance major at Washington University. She has accompanied singers, instrumentalists, choirs, and variety shows throughout the St. Louis area. After a 5-year stint as a registered music therapist and assistant professor of music therapy at Maryville University, Phyllis returned to her first love, the piano, where she maintained a private studio in her home until 2012, when she retired from teaching. In 2009, Phyllis became a docent for the Opera Theater of St. Louis, where she continues to give illustrated lectures on opera, and which is one of these today. Welcome, Phyllis, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy. Happy to be here this morning and to talk about the Magic Flute. But first, I want to just talk about opera theater for a moment, since I am representing Opera Theater of St. Louis. It was founded in the spring of 1976 by a small group of opera lovers to bring festival quality opera to the St. Louis area. By the end of that inaugural 3-week session, Opera Theater was playing to sold out houses. And by the way, I was one of the first subscribers. Momentum continued to build and accolades continued to mount. In the ensuing 45 years, I can't believe it's been that long, in addition to presenting top-notch classical opera, the company has presented more than 40 world or American premieres, such as the 2019 commission of Fire Shut Up in My Bones, composed by jazz musician Terence Blanchard. In 2021, the Metropolitan Opera opened its season with this very opera as a first work by a Black composer and librettist to grace the Met's stage. In addition, Opera Theater has a long tradition of discovering and promoting careers of the finest artists of the next generation through the Jardine Young Artists Theater and the Gaddis Festival artist programs. Many singers who have appeared with Opera Theater early in their careers have gone on to illustrious professional careers. Opera Today has praised OTSL's legacy of innovation, saying, if opera is to remain a viable, accessible 21st century art form, it will be largely owing to the commitment of visionary companies like Opera Theater of St. Louis. By the way, we have been reviewed in the Wall Street Journal as well as the New York Times. These innovating and visionary traditions continue for the upcoming For Opera 2022 season as well. One of the operas in this season is Awakenings by composer Tobias Picker and Aryeh Lev Stolman, librettist. It marks Opera Theater's 29th world premiere. Now, to talk about Magic Flute, as that's what I'm going to speak to you about today. It's one of Mozart's most popular operas and the most accessible. There are many interesting elements in this opera, so sometimes it's a little hard to know where to begin. So first, I will give you a brief bio of what was happening in Mozart's life at the time, 1791, the year the opera was composed, as well as the year of Mozart's death. I will also talk about certain aspects of European and particularly German-Austrian history at the time. Second, I will define the 3 various forms of opera with special emphasis on the German Singspiel and show how this form is depicted in the opera. Third, we will look at the elements of Freemasonry contained in the opera. And fourth, I will tell you the plot of the opera, along with an overview of the beautiful music contained in the opera and a particular look at the tremendous variety of music. Oops, okay. Mozart was born in Salzburg, Austria in 1756 into a musical family. He showed musical talent at a very young age. And when Leopold, who was Mozart's father and a violinist, was teaching Mozart's sister Nannerl, age 7, to play the piano, Mozart, age 3, was already showing a great interest in learning. By the time Mozart was age 5, he was composing little minuets and other pieces, which Leopold notated. Hard to believe that, but. When the children got older, this was Mozart's house, and he was born in this house. So when the children got older, Leopold traveled all over Europe with them while they performed for royalty and nobility. In fact, Mozart was the first composer to write piano duets so that he and his sister could perform them together during their travels. When Mozart was only 8 years old, he wrote his first symphony. Imagine that. So here we have one of the greatest, if not the greatest, musical geniuses of all time. In spite of his tremendous talent, Mozart had to earn a living mostly by composing for the royal court or as a Kapellmeister, a director of music for German royalty. Mozart continued to compose, perform, and direct orchestras for his entire adult life. In fact, during his lifetime, Mozart composed multiple symphonies, sonatas, concertos for all instruments, string quartets, and various ensembles. His numbered compositions go up to 626, the Requiem being the last one. Whoops, the wrong way. Speaking of numbers, in 1864, in the decades following Mozart's death, there was an attempt to catalog all of his compositions by a man named Ludwig von Kerkel. Hence the K number on almost all of Mozart's work. Since that time, there have been 6 editions of this catalog, the last one in 1964. Mozart himself cataloged his work starting in February of 1764. Prior to that time, Leopold had also kept a record of his works. After Mozart's death in 1791, more of his music was found. Sometimes they were just fragments, and proper dating was impossible. This Kerkel catalog now includes pieces that Mozart composed when he was 5 years old and on up. By the time Mozart was only 11, he had composed 15 violin sonatas and 5 concertos. Now here's just a table of contents of a duet book of Mozart's that I own. And you can see on the right side, that little KV number, that's the Kerkel number. The V just stands for Virgin. So if you ever look at Mozart's music, take a look at the K. And Mozart's wife, Constanza, whom he married on August 4th, 1782, was one of the 4 musically talented Weber sisters, or Weber in German. He had originally courted another sister, Aloysia, a gifted singer, but she eventually lost interest in him. Later, he wrote the part of the Queen of the Night in the Magic Flute for another very talented sister, Josepha, a coloratura soprano, that is a very high soprano. Both of her arias in this opera have an amazing range up to high F. Now back to the Magic Flute. In order to understand its genesis, we have to jump to 1791. At this time, reimbursement was not always forthcoming from the royals that Mozart entertained. Despite his prodigious talent, Mozart couldn't find a position at court that paid a decent salary. He was frequently supported by the Emperor Joseph II with part-time work, but was still not a satisfactory position for Mozart. So he moved to Vienna, hoping to find better work there. At this time, 1791, famous year, there also arose a new king, Leopold, the brother of Joseph, who was not interested in being a patron of Mozart. He was not as enlightened as his brother. Also, at the same time, there was a war with the Turkish Empire, causing noble and wealthy patrons to reduce their expenditures for concerts and operas. In addition, Mozart's wife was intermittently ill, causing medical expenses. Mozart had no choice but to turn to the middle class venues to earn a living. In addition, his former librettist, De Ponte, was no longer available. He had left Vienna due to intrigues, and that's a whole nother story. Mozart composed successfully in 3 genres of opera: opera seria, opera buffa, and Singspiel. The opera seria was a more rigid and predictable style, usually about nobilities and gods. It consisted of recitatives, that is a kind of speak-sung dialogue, and arias, alternating. Mozart created a masterful opera seria with Idomeneo in 1781. And another opera seria, La Clemenza di Tito, which was composed for Leopold's coronation at the same time that he was working on Flute, 1791. And then the second type of opera, opera buffa, is a comic opera. Mozart's most successful operas of that genre were Marriage of Figaro, Così fan tutte, and Don Giovanni. Mozart also did another innovative thing. He added ensembles to this form. And as I said, De Ponte was the librettist for these 3 operas, all of which were in Italian. So far, everything was in Italian. And it was through composed, that is, the dialogue was sung. The subject matter of an opera buffa was not exclusively about kings and queens or gods, but rather more about ordinary people. Now, this third type of opera, the Singspiel, a humorous opera in German with spoken dialogue and song sung in German as well. Back to Mozart and more about Singspiel. At the time, Mozart's finances were in dire straits. So what was he to do? In Vienna, he met up with an old friend, Emmanel Schikaneder, librettist, impresario, actor, singer, and playwright. He established a theater in the suburb of Vienna called the Freihaus auf der Wieden. Schikaneder was truly a jack of all trades, wandering musician, entrepreneur, actor, poet, showman. He approached Mozart to write an opera about magic in German, a Singspiel, a dramatic entertainment with spoken dialogue and songs in German. At the time, there was a desire to create a German language repertory for German-speaking people. Vienna was a region where the Singspiel developed. In addition, Singspiels usually had a simplistic fairy tale plot. The roots of the Singspiel were in Jesuit drama and religious themes, and the character Zoroastro in this opera, the high priest. His music is simple in style, less lyrical, more somber, almost like the hymns of a Lutheran church. Then there was improvised comedy, parodying aristocrats and their culture. A Hans Wurst, sort of like a Jack Sausage type character, which was a servant driven by his physical needs. And for flute, we have Papageno, the Queen's bird catcher, who is this type. And then there was also this cultural nationalism movement. So Emperor Joseph II of Austria, again, a patron of Mozart, had previously established a Singspiel company in 1778 for the very purpose of composing German operas and performing. Mozart composed his opera, The Abduction from the Seraglio, in German for that theater, but the company failed by 1778, even though the opera was successful. So Mozart was happy for the opportunity to write another opera in German. Schikaneder was not only the librettist for the Magic Flute, he was also the first papageno, the bird catcher. You can see his feathers. Mozart's last year, 1791, and he was only 35 years old, was one of his most productive. In fact, there is a book called Mozart's Last Year, 1791, by H.C. Robbins Landon. Not only did he compose the magic flute, as I said, he also composed La Clemenza di Tito, an opera seria for Leopold's coronation. Plus, he did a clarinet concerto and a piano concerto, much of a requiem mass, and several shorter pieces. He was working frantically, going back and forth between Prague for Tito and Vienna for Flute, a distance of 157 miles. He actually finished Flute 2 days before the first performance on September 30th. The opening of Flute was very successful. It played to full houses night after night and helped Mozart become financially solvent. Another aspect of the Schikaneder-Mozart relationship was that both Mozart and Schikaneder were Freemasons. The order of the Freemasons came about in the Middle Ages, where the Guild of the Master Mason became the most important of craft guilds. The Masons supported the ideas of equality, fraternity, and the spiritual improvement of men's lives. The first modern lodge, Masonic lodge, was founded in England in 1717. The first lodge in Austria was established in 1737. However, royalty was very suspicious and threatened by Masons. Leopold, the emperor, believed that the Masons were behind the independence of the English colony and the French Revolution. By the way, Leopold and Joseph's little sister was Marie Antoinette, a famous lady that lost her head in the French Revolution. In fact, the founding fathers of our country were all Masons. I bet you didn't know that. Benjamin Franklin, here is a sculpture of Benjamin Franklin handing George Washington a Masonic apron. The pyramid on the back of our $1 bill with a God's eye above it is also a Masonic symbol. In the 18th century, the Masonry ideas of brotherhood, freedom, equality, justice, and tolerance were a great threat to royalty, as well as to the church. The first Vienna Lodge had been established in 1742. Queen Maria Theresa raided that lodge, even though her husband Francis belonged to it. Incidentally, the trials of the second act of Flute are similar to Masonic initiations. Also, the number 3 has great significance to the Masons, as well as in the opera. There are 3 maids of the Queen of the Night. There are 3 sprites or boys to guide Tamino, the prince. There's a 3-chord introduction to the overture written in the key of E flat, which has 3 flats. The characters knock 3 times on the door and subject Tamino, the prince, to 3 trials. Another way of looking at the magic flute is that it is a political allegory for the struggle of the French Revolution. The Queen of the Night could be seen as Louis XIV, Tamino the prince as the French populace, and Pamina, his princess, as liberty. Or we could view the opera as a contrast between opposites, masculine and feminine, light and dark, ridiculous and sublime. Or compare the Queen of the Night and her coloratura soprano voice and very elaborate high arias to the high priest Erasto, who is a basso profundo, and he has very simple, unadorned arias. Lastly, I wanted to show you this poster from 1793. It's a poster for the opera, shows Erasto entering as he drives a chariot led by lions. You see Pamina, the princess, on the right, and Pamino, the prince, on the left. Finally, I have spoken about Mozart, his life, his work, especially investigating the environment surrounding Mozart in Austria prior to the magic flute. We have explored the Singspiel style of magic flute and demonstrated how the symbols of masonry were used in the opera. Now onward to the story of the opera and its music. And here is a cast of the magic flute. You will be seeing excerpts. The only one that's not in the excerpts is Monastitas. To see him, you're going to have to see the opera. That's all there is to it. So Tamino is in love with Pamina. There are three ladies of the night well, I think it's better if we just go on and see the excerpts from here. Nothing can get in the way of true love, not even monsters or mothers-in-law. Serpents and sorcerers are no match for true love. Prince Tamino is on a high-paced adventure to save the Princess Pamina from the clutches of the evil Zarastro. He's not alone. He's got his loyal bird-catching friend, Papageno. They each have a magical instrument. Tamino has the flute. Papageno gets bells. And there are three benevolent little spirits, these sprites, to help them through every trial. So onward, the first excerpt that you will be viewing is the overture from a Met Opera production of 2006. During this overture, you will be taken backstage as the main characters, Pamino, the foreign prince, Pamina, his princess-to-be, Papageno, the bird catcher, the queen of the night, mother of Pamino, and Zarastro, the high priest. They're all getting into makeup and costumes. Also, you will see the stagehands moving scenery and animating the fantastic life-size puppet animals. There it goes. Did you notice the first three chords of the overture? I didn't tell you to listen for that, but those first three chords. Okay, so and also I wanted you to see Julie Taymor, who she actually directed Lion King, the stage version. So she does these fantastic, huge animal puppets that are so amazing. So this story takes place long ago in ancient Egypt. We know this because the very last chorus of the opera mentions Isis and Osiris. Tamino, a foreign prince, is pursued by a serpent as he walks in the woods. He faints from fear, and along come three brave ladies in waiting to the queen of the night, who kill the serpent. Then the ladies argue over who should stay with Tamino while they go tell the queen what happened. But finally, they all leave as Papageno, the bird catcher, enters playing the panpipes. Next, you will hear Papageno's aria. Notice that the whole piece is played in the orchestra before Papageno sings it. Remember that the first Papageno, played by Mozart's friend Schikaneder, is master of all trades, but perhaps not the world's greatest singer. He makes sure that Papageno remembers the tune and the key is it in by playing the whole thing before Papageno even sings. And it is a very simple and catchy and repetitive tune.
Where am I? Am I alive? Someone's killed the serpent. What's that noise? That's my name, and catching birds, well, that's my game. My snares are laid, my sights are set, I whistle them into my net. My life's my own, so bright and free, 'cause all the birds belong to me. If only there were traps for girls, I'd catch a dozen fine girls. I'm Amadeus, that's my name, and catching birds, well, that's my game. And when I get them nice and plump, I'll trade them for a sugar lump. And give it to my favorite one, and woo her till her heart is won. Then startle in my nest with a lie, and gently rock to a lullaby.
So the prince had awakened and seen this dead monster, and Papageno lets him believe that he, Papageno, has slain the serpent. But because of his lie, the ladies return and they put a padlock on his mouth. The padlock doesn't stop him from singing, but even though his mouth is locked. But I'm not going to show you that excerpt. You'll have to see the opera. At the same time, the ladies in waiting give Pamino a portrait of the queen's daughter, Pamina. The prince immediately falls in love with her picture. In this next excerpt, you will hear a most beautiful lovesick aria by the tenor Prince Pamino as he sings to the portrait of the queen's daughter.
This portrait's beauty
The queen of the night implores Pamino to save her daughter from the evil Zarastro. The ladies in waiting give Tamino this magic flute to protect him. They also unlock Papageno's mouth and give him a set of magic bells for protection. So here I wanted you to see Pamino playing the magic flute.
Alive, alive, I thank you from my heart. If only I could find the phrases, Almighty God, to sing your praises. This song comes from a heart in love, in love. Let it soar, soar high above. How soft and sweet your magic tone, your songs entrancing. Music is the heart too. The birds are sing, the beasts are dancing. How soft and sweet your magic tone. Your song is entrancing. Music is the heart too. The birds are sing, the beasts are. But, dear Pamina is not here. My Pamina is still lost. Pamina, Pamina, answer me, answer me. Not there, not there. Where, there, here, for she is nowhere near me now. Ah, that is Papageno's sound.
I love the seeing these animal puppets dancing. So Pamino is captured by a servant of Zarastro's. The Zarastro, he's really not a bad guy. And it turns out that the queen is the really evil one. So Papageno recognizes that Pamino is there and tells her that Pamino will rescue her from this servant of Zarastro's. A priest explains to the two that the queen is the really evil one. And here's where Freemasonry enters the picture. After meeting Zarastro, Tamino and Papageno are sent off to be purified before undergoing the trials of initiation. Zarastro tells the priests that Tamino is virtuous, and Zarastro abducted Pamino because he knew she was destined for Tamino. Papageno eats a meal brought by the three boys, but Tamino does not eat because he plays his flute and adheres to a vow of silence he has taken. But Pamino thinks that the silence is rejection. Papageno, because he can't keep his mouth shut, is rejected for the initiation. And an old one, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean that to play that soon. But this will be, I'll go back, and this will be the Queen of the Night's brilliant aria. She has given her daughter a dagger to kill Zoroastro, and she threatens her daughter with death if she does not obey. Here is the magnificent aria of vocal fireworks by the Queen of the Night. That aria thrills me every time I hear it. So finally, Monastatos, the servant, and the queen and her 3 ladies in waiting attempt to assault this temple, but thunder and lightning hurl them into the depths of hell in defeat. Tamino and Pamina are welcomed into the temple of the sun. Notice the contrast, the dark and the sun, as light defeats darkness. And notice all the 3-sided shapes, the masonry symbols in the background. Finally, we will view the final chorus with the benevolent Zoroastro and his masons. We know that Pamino and Pamina will live happily ever after. And this is the final scene of the opera. Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. This is Pamina. This is Pamina, who thinks that Tamino doesn't love her, and he's kept his vow of silence and has not spoken to her. So here she sings her heartbreaking aria about losing her prince. My heart is filled with sadness. Oops. forget it.
There we go.
That was, I think, a very heartbreaking aria. So she's really down. But as I said, the queen and her three ladies attempt to assault the temple, and they are thunder and lightning hurl them into the depths of hell. And as I said, Tamino and Pamina are welcomed into the Temple of Sun. And as I said, sorry, this is my first presentation, so the technical part's a little bit disconcerting. Finally, this is what we're going to see. The final chorus was Erasro and his Masons welcoming Pamino and Pamina. And we know that they will live happily ever after as fairy tales in that way.
Sun's golden splendor next time.
With that final scene, my story is complete. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and I will be very happy to entertain any questions you might have. I'm not sure how to see them, but
So why don't we go ahead and stop the share?
yes, ma'am. Okay. There we go. Now, is there anything in the chat? Or okay,
Nothing in the chat, but if you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand, you can type something in the chat, unmute yourself. Do we have questions? So
Phyllis, is this one of the last things he wrote before he died?
absolutely. Who's asking?
it's Mickey. Mickey?
Yes,
My Mickey? Mickey.
yes.
Yes,
It
1791.
was excellent, Phyllis. Thank you so much. It was just beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mickey. Yes. As I said, there was a
Well, he
book,
crammed a lot into not very many years.
35 years. It's amazing. Just
Wow.
amazing.
What did he die from?
That's questionable. Some think it's overwork, something he had strep, he had scarlet fever as a child. You know, medicine is not like it is now. I know he had a lot of trouble with swelling, just, and also, you know, he was working so hard, and between Vienna and Salzburg is, I think it's 157 miles by coach. He was doing this on a regular basis. So he might have just died from overwork, but nobody really knows exactly what he died from. That's all I can say.
Do you think he was driving himself knowing he wouldn't live long? Or, I mean, he was
Could be.
just a fanatic.
He was definitely driving himself. There's no question about it. And who knows if
He was a genius.
If he had lived today, you know, who knows what he would have produced. The same thing, Schubert too died at a young age. He was like between 30 and 35. That happened in those days. Any other questions, anybody? Oh, please.
I'm not seeing any at this time.
Well, I thank you all for listening, and I hope you will attend the opera. I hear that it is going to be geared or slanted towards children. So if you have children, grandchildren, or like me, great grandchildren, take them to the opera and let them enjoy it.
Yeah, Phyllis and I had spoke before a little bit about this particular opera, and this is sort of a fantasy. Will be delivered possibly as a fantasy, so it would be fun to take your grandchildren or children or great grandchildren. So, do we have any more questions? Well, Phyllis, this was very beautiful, and we really, really appreciate the work you put into it and the music that you shared. And we want to thank you, and hopefully we can have you back again for a different program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.